Hi, and welcome to What's Up Williston, the town's monthly TV show where we take a close look at things going on in the community. I'm your host, Erik Wells. This month, we're gearing up for spring, and we're going to take a closer look at composting and gardening. So my first guest this month is Layn from the Chittenden Solid Waste District. Lauren, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Lauren, I wonder if you could start. Could you explain to viewers what's your role at the Solid Waste District?
Yes, I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. I work with communities, towns, landlords, property managers to help them manage their solid waste. And that means recycling, trash, and soon-to-be food scraps. So I also do backyard compost workshops. We do tours of our facilities like Green Mountain Compost and the Materials Recovery Facility, which is where recycling goes to get sorted. So yeah, we're really an educational department in the Solid Waste District to help everyone learn about what is the best thing to do with your things you don't want.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about composting today. And I thought to start at a really high level, what is compost?
So compost is a soil amendment. You know, it's not soil itself. It's something you want to add to your soil to help with root fertility. So it's really good to add in the spring or then again in the fall so that it's building the soil structure. It can help a lot with, if you have really clay soil, it can help break up that clay and help with the soil structure there. And if you have really sandy soil, it actually can help hold the moisture in, because with sandy soil, it often drains fast. So, and then, you know, it's really, I like to stress that it's not soil and it's not fertilizer. It's an amendment to the soil to help hold the nutrients in, hold moisture in, and make your plants really happy.
Soil amendment. I never heard it described that way. Huh.
Amendment.
Interesting. Expand it and help it out. So today we were thinking, if you want to start composting at home, where do you get started? And we have a number of samples and kind of a progression of compost on the table here. So I thought you could kind of walk me through what to do.
Yeah, so if you want to get started, you should definitely come to one of our backyard compost workshops. But if you can't, you know, I like to stress that it can be as easy as you want to make it, and you can also make it really involved and get your compost quickly. And you want to build it around your lifestyle and the space you have and the time you have. And also the type of material you produce a lot of waste, I mean. So, you know, you can go and buy a lot of either complicated or, you know, already produced compost systems, but you can also use things like cinder blocks. Pallets are great, fencing, 2x4s, and some hardware cloth. You can do all sorts of different contraptions to build your pile. And we actually do have plans for that on our website, cool. So I can send that. And really what you want to make sure you have is you need to have not just food scraps, because we're really focusing on food scrap composting, but you need to also make sure that you have some browns. The food scraps you want to think of as the greens, and the browns are things like leaves. If you have straw, wood shavings, you can also use paper towels, newspaper, paper bags. So. Okay.
We were talking before the show, a 3-to-1 ratio is what you look for between the two?
Yeah, so in the workshops I've done, and the thing that I didn't realize until I became more educated as well, is that you can't just throw food scraps in a pile and expect it to, not smell, not attract animals, and actually produce compost. You have to make sure that you have a good ratio of greens to browns. So you want to make sure you have 3 times as many browns, that's the leaves, more of the yard debris, paper towels, etc., that you have to your food scraps. So I like to point out this is a food scrap collector. And so if you had this full and you put it on your pile, you want to put of the nitrogen. That's really what the greens are. It's the nitrogen, that the microbes that are breaking down your compostable materials. They want nitrogen and carbon. Carbon is the browns. So if you fill this with your nitrogen, with your greens, your food scraps, put it on your pile, you want to have 3 of these of browns. Now you don't have to measure it out perfectly. You don't have to weigh it, because composting is a science, but it's not an exact science. Just kind of eyeball it. But that's the #1 thing that will help with deterring animals, with having it not smell and be slimy, is really maintaining that 3-to-1 ratio. 3 parts brown to 1 part greens.
Okay. So let's look at what you brought in here today.
Yes.
So we've got some, so here are our browns. So we got some newspaper, paper towels,
That's part of a leaf bag.
Part of a leaf
yep,
bag.
So you can use the bag too. Just got to break, the more you break up all of your materials, the faster it will break down and the quicker you'll get compost. But, you don't have to. I don't break down my leaves or anything like that. But rip up pieces of cardboard, newspaper, paper towels and napkins can just go in there as long as you haven't used any cleaning products, anything chemical like you wouldn't want to put on the pile. And then, you can also chop up your banana peels and things like that. But yeah, so this side is the greens.
Grounds.
And yes, even though this piece of bread that got really stale, unfortunately, even though it is brown and the coffee grounds are brown, they're food scraps, they're nitrogen. So these are the greens and these are the browns.
Okay.
And, as long as there's no meat, bones, or dairy, we don't recommend that for backyard compost. And we work with Fish and Wildlife as well to make sure that we're in line with what they're doing to protect our wildlife. No meat, bones, or dairy in your backyard system because that will attract animals, and things like bones, they're not going to break down in your pile very fast. Your pile's not going to get quite hot enough like it does at Green Mountain Compost, where we have huge piles that get to 170 degrees. You can bring your meat, bones, and dairy to us, but you don't want to put them in your backyard pile.
Okay. That's a key point to remember.
It is, yeah. We want to make sure we're not attracting animals and things like, there's even some bear in Chittenden County we need to protect, and we don't want them to be coming into our environment and getting used to us. So.
Okay. So next here, I know we're talking about air and moisture. We've got everything in our pile. What should we do to maintain that pile?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, essentially you're creating a recipe for these microbes, things like fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates, things like worms and bugs. You're actually trying to make an environment for them. So you're really microbe farming. And not only do they need the right ratio of food, their food is nitrogen and carbon, but they also need air and they need moisture. Those are the three things that you need to give them, or give them access to. You don't have to blow air into your pile. And then also time. Yeah, make sure that you're not. One of the reasons it's important to keep your food scraps out of the landfill is because the landfill is actually an anaerobic environment, so they don't break down very fast. So you want to make sure anaerobic means no oxygen. You want to give them an aerobic environment, so give them the oxygen. And the best way to do that is to have your pile open to the air. It doesn't have to be open completely. A lot of people use these black bins, and we actually have those available at cost at Green Mountain Compost through Chittenden Solid Waste District. And it's open to the ground, and then there's also holes in it, so it lets the air in there.
Okay.
And then turning your compost is the other way to add air. So that could either be shoveling from one side to the other, or just getting a pitchfork and kind of mixing it up. Kind of stab little holes in it just to make sure that there's nothing in the middle that's getting soggy or stinky. That means you need to get some more air in there.
How often should you do that?
When you're beginning and you're getting used to what the pile, you'll get used to seeing it and being able to be like, oh, I need to add some air. But really, if you want a measurement for when you're beginning, once a week, give it a check. So, yeah.
So next here, I think we're gonna do a swish test.
So
Is that what it is?
This is both. So these are two samples of compost piles I've been working on, and the best way to know if you're getting enough moisture and air into your pile is to do a squeeze test.
Okay. So
just pick up that pile and give it a good squeeze. So yeah, see, there's water running off. You can tell there's quite a bit of moisture on the paper towel as well. That's a little too wet. There's water dripping out of the pile. And also, can you give it a smell?
Yeah, it smells dirty. It smells like dirt.
I smelled it earlier, and it smelled a little bit like yucky food scraps still. So it still kind of smelled like food. So if you just want to wipe your hand a little there, and then you can do this pile.
Try not to get the dry.
Yeah.
Get too wet. Yeah. I'll use the other end.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Ambidextrous. Yep, give that a squeeze. Do you feel some moisture?
Yeah, some, but not as much as the first
and let's look at your hand. The other thing is, see, there's moisture on your hand, but it's not dripping all the way down.
Yeah.
So that's got some good moisture in your pile. So that's how you can check it. Obviously, it's not finished. You can still see some twigs and leaves, but that's how, when your pile is still breaking down, you can give it a test to see if it's enough moisture. We like to say it's like a damp sponge is what you want. So, and then, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, how long, we're going to look at the finished product now, but how do you get from the start to the finish?
Again, if you want to get some apparatuses like tumblers, and you're going to measure it, and you're going to be really maintaining your pile a lot and breaking down all your material. You know, it might take less than a year, but I like to just manage people's expectations and say probably a year before you're going to have some working compost. Especially being in Vermont, things are going to slow down significantly in the winter when it's very cold.
So sorry, this would be our finished product.
Yeah, and this is like top-notch finished. But you know, basically it looks like dirt. You can feel some moisture in it. We like to call it black gold because, you know, the difference between this, and I should have brought a little sample of just regular soil, is really that it's a rich, dark material, some moisture in it, and it smells like earth.
So if you're starting a pile, you want to keep adding to it? Is there like a point in time where you want to start a new pile?
Yeah,
I mean, mix that's further along.
And that, yeah. So you know, eventually, depending on your household size and the weather, when you start your pile, you might end up filling up one of your apparatuses, whatever that may be, your bin. Excuse me. And then, you know, you might want to get another bin, or some people like to have a pallet system that has 2 or 3 bins. You can add to that while one kind of cooks. But there are gradual systems like the Soil Saver that a lot of people use, the black box. You'll see them in people's backyards. That's actually supposed to be gradual. So you harvest the compost from the bottom and you can continue to layer and add your materials on the top. And it should sort of have a circular harvesting and adding. So.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Lauren.
Yeah,
I know there's a lot to this. We've done a quick overview tour, and you mentioned workshops with CSWD, a number of resources on your website, pamphlets. You could stop by the office.
Yes. So. Yep. And we're here to help and to educate, and to give people the skills and tools they need. So I'd love to keep having people come to our workshops and ask questions. We have a hotline as well that you can call. So please come on to use our facilities.
Great.
And our resources.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. So next this month, we're going to get into the garden and work on some gardening and planting techniques. So joining me now are June Jones and Sue Stanne. They're both master gardeners for the UVM Extension. They're also involved in Williston and Bloom in Town, our volunteer organization that helps do plantings in beds and hanging baskets around town to keep the community beautiful. Thanks so much for coming on.
Okay. You're welcome.
How long have both of you been involved with the UVM Master Gardener program?
Well, it's over 20 years.
Oh.
So I've been retired from work for over 20 years. So it's a nice avocation to do, and, you know, getting outside, planting, and I have all my kids come over and get vegetables. So it's a nice thing to do.
And
I've been involved since 2003, I believe, with Master Gardeners, and soon afterwards joined the Williston and Bloom Committee, our volunteer committee to plant flowers around town.
Great.
It's interesting.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of experience.
Yes.
So we thought today first we could talk about tomatoes. Everyone likes tomatoes.
Yep, and we have a nice big one here.
So this is a tomato start. And what you're going to demonstrate, June, is taking it from the start into a pot. And the potted tomato, you could have it out on your deck or your porch to run out and grab a quick tomato for a sandwich or a salad. So June's going to plant, and Sue, if you want to kind of walk us through what she's doing as she's working on it here.
Yeah.
And this would be the same for planting in the garden too. June's adding a little tomato fertilizer. Tomatoes like low nitrogen. Otherwise, you'll get all green growth and you won't get the fruiting as much. So tomato fertilizers usually have a lower nitrogen count than potassium and phosphorus. So that's what you want to look for. And she's planting it. You want to plant fairly deep down in the roots, because the roots will come up and form from where you're planting, from under the soil.
Okay.
And get a stockier plant. So she's planting that. You should look for a stocky plant that's not tall and leggy. And you shouldn't start a plant that already has blossoms or tomatoes on it.
Okay.
Only because they might fail eventually. They might not do as well as when you start them earlier. these will catch up. So she's planting that
came
nice and
right along.
deep. Nice and deep, yep.
So you put it straight down. You can put it straight down in the pot. You don't need to
Yes,
angle
straight
it.
down. The roots will form on the stem.
Okay.
If it's a very tall, leggy plant, you can plant it on the side and actually put the stem into the dirt a couple inches deep, and it'll grow roots on the stem
Okay.
and get going. So I put a half a cup of tomato fertilizer in the hole, and it's up into the pot or a hole, whichever, if you're doing it in the main garden. And usually you plant it up to the where this little stem is here, and then just water it, and it should go fine.
So how often should you water it?
When the soil's dry. So, you know, if it's outside and it's rained, that should do it. If not, when you feel the soil's dry, just make, I usually do a little trench around it to water around the plant, and that in the pot, obviously, end point is when it comes out the bottom. In the garden, you know, you can usually a watering can full should do it for a plant. In our garden, we have pipes all around with automatic watering.
Oh, nice.
That goes into each tomato plant, so that's an easy way to do it. And you just have the timer set, so you have all different options.
But one thing I thought of is as the tomato plant grows, becomes more mature, I've seen people stake it or tie it. When should that come in? I can imagine the heavy tomatoes start to weigh it over a little bit.
Right.
You need to stake the tomatoes early, so especially if you have a cage,
Okay.
because it'll be too hard to put a full-grown tomato plant in a cage. So stake it early. What else is another thing important is to cut off the suckers later on, and I can barely see a sucker. The sucker is starting on this leaf. It'll show between the leaf stem and the stem.
Okay.
And when it gets a couple inches long, it's just taking up energy, so snip them off.
Okay.
You can pinch them.
Pinch them off.
Pinch them right off.
Yes. Another important thing to do is to make sure as the plant grows up, you trim the lower leaves off to avoid disease. You can get early blight, which comes from the soil, and it'll keep spreading up the plant. So a good way to avoid that is to, well, first of all, try to water your plants from the bottom.
Okay.
Because it'll come up from the soil. Keep the soil evenly moist to avoid other problems like blossom end rot. We tend to get a lot of rain at first, and then we'll get a drought, and that could cause your first batches of tomatoes to have blossom end rot. And then it'll go away eventually as it gets drier. But keep the bottom leaves trimmed. Water during the morning if you need to, so that leaves have a chance to dry out. And you should be okay. Your tomatoes should be fine if you have early blight. Another way to avoid early blight is to rotate your crop. So when you plant the following year, don't plant tomatoes in the same area where potatoes or eggplant or peppers have grown. If you have room to rotate. In a small garden, it's hard. So I just deal with trying to keep the air to the plants and cutting off the affected leaves.
Well, one other thing we were talking about before the show was a hardening off period. If you're going to do what we just did and then transplant a star into your garden, could you guys explain what that means and why that's important?
The plants are coming right from a greenhouse, so they need to get used to the outdoor temperatures and the sun. So about 2 weeks before you plant in the garden, take your plants out, put them in a sheltered area, and introduce them to sunlight and cooler weather, maybe an hour the first day or two, and then introduce them for longer periods of time until they get acclimated to the sunny conditions, because you'll be planting in full sun in your garden. If you put them out in full sun now for a day, they might get sun scald.
Yeah,
So,
an easy way to do it, if you have a garden cart, put all your plants in the garden cart, pull it out of the garage for your length of time, and then just put it back in the garage when your time is up.
So it's important, you don't want to jump into it too quickly
Right.
with the start. You don't want to go from one extreme with a nice warm greenhouse to
Right,
the Vermont
right.
weather and
Yeah,
this time
exactly.
of year.
Yeah, and it has been cool this year. It hasn't been a warm season, because like our Master Gardener plant sale is coming up, and we dig plants from our yard, and things aren't really up that much yet. So that is not a good thing. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to do a hanging basket.
Okay.
And this is, well, anyhow, you're supposed to put a cap full of fertilizer here, and we'll kind of fudge it a little bit. And then you want to put your plants at an angle. And where you have roots here, just tease, whoops, this got a lot of water. Just tease your roots apart so they're not all put together. And then just put your plant, let's see, this is a big one, so we want this one in the middle. Then this one goes in the middle, and then these little guys kind of go at an angle. Come on.
There he goes.
Yeah.
Strong roots on that one.
Yeah, right. So just move, tease the roots out, and then just put these at an angle, and then we'll fill it in with dirt. And then these flowers, over the season, these are pretty good about self-cleaning the flowers off the plant. Some of your petunias, you might have to take a scissor or pinch them off, type of thing. So anyhow, the plants you see in the greenhouse where you buy a basket, you can make your own easily.
So are these all petunias?
Well, these are called, no, they're, what's the name of them?
Calibrachoa.
Yeah,
I was way
and
off.
these are the ones that kind of clean the flowers off themselves.
Okay.
So you don't have to go around pinching them. And then we just fill this in with dirt and water them when they're dry, and usually when the water's dripping out the bottom. And that's your hanging basket.
How long will these flowers last till it gets
all
frost? The
summer.
frost comes
oh, yeah,
in the
right.
early fall.
And then
So
even
enjoy it all then.
talking about frost,
Oop, we're hooked.
depending on how many you have, you can put them in the garage, bring them in off the deck and put them in the garage to keep, when there's going to be a frost coming, and that prolongs it. And of course, this kind of flower the hummingbirds like. And Sue tells me they're at her house already. I haven't
Yesterday
seen 'em.
morning they showed up, yes.
They're back.
I haven't seen them at my house yet, but they're coming. So they like the tubular flower like that. So that's a nice thing to have for them to come back.
Then you're going to show us how to start some seeds too.
Yeah, I brought these. You can buy a whole tray of these things at Agway, Gardener Supply, wherever you trade. And there's a black tray, and then you can put these in there, and it has a little plastic dome on top.
Okay.
So essentially you just fill all the little squares with dirt, water it well until the water comes out the bottom, and then I have a little spritzer bottle too that I use. And I have grow lights, so I put them under the grow lights, and I also have heating pads that go underneath them. And then just push them down so they're packed, and then just take your seeds, and it's fun to do with kids because they like to see the seeds grow. I've done them with my grandkids. Just do 1 or 2 seeds per square, and then I take a little skewer, and just, it'll tell you on the package how deep. Like these are 1/4 inch.
Okay.
Some say 1 inch. So for 1/4 inch, you can eyeball how much that is on your little skewer, and that's how much you push them into the dirt.
Oh.
And so you can just go along like this and push them into the dirt, and then just use your finger to press them down. And keep them watered, and keep if you don't have the little dome, you can use a piece of saran wrap over the top until they start to come up, germinate, and you got your own plants that way if you have particular things you like that you might not find at the garden center.
Quick and easy, it seems like.
Yeah,
Not
there
a lot
you
of
go.
time. Just make sure we water them and
Yeah,
keep them warm.
exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, June.
Okay.
So we had a couple other things we wanted to share before we wrap up here, and one is what we call volcano mulching. This time of year, we see a lot of mulch being spread around trees, and then we'll have a picture on the screen here. But
Yes.
Sue, if you could explain what volcano mulching is and why it's bad.
It's so bad it'll kill your tree, and you see it all around town. People who do mulching a lot of times would just pile the mulch against the bark of the tree. And what happens is this suffocates the tree. Moisture will get in. It'll affect the phloem bark of the tree, which is the plumbing system for the tree. It'll cause the area to rot.
Okay.
The tree will decline and die eventually. But you see so many people doing volcano mulching, they think it looks nice to have it piled up. And in reality, what you should do, and if you have somebody do your mulching, make sure you ask them to pull the bark away from the tree, or pull the mulch away from the tree, 6 inches from the tree.
Okay.
And then start at maybe 1 inch and go a little bit, maybe 4 inches by the time you get to the ring. And this holds the moisture in, and it protects the tree from string trimmer damage or lawnmower damage. So mulching the trees is an excellent idea, but not to pile it where it's going to kill the tree.
Okay, that's an important thing to remember.
Yes, so 6 inches from the tree, and the root flare of the tree, should be showing at all times, providing the tree hasn't been planted too deep to begin with. If that's the case, you want to dig down and expose the root flare. And so just keep that in mind. Show the root flare, no bark, no mulch should be touching the tree at all.
Okay. And we've run out of time, but we covered a lot today. And I know both of you are involved in the Master Gardener program. They have some great resources for folks. They have a helpline, right? And what's that all about?
A helpline you can call with any gardening questions or problems. You can send samples into the lab for analysis if you're having diseased plants. So any questions you have on gardening, it's a great resource. There's also a website online, so you can get in and find all sorts of fact sheets. There's fact sheets from Cornell, University of Maine, New Hampshire. One thing I wanted to mention, if you do a search looking for gardening information, specify your search .edu. That way you're getting scientific results from a university. And it's an excellent website. You can submit questions online too for the helpline.
Great. An outstanding resource out there. And one quick thing, Williston and Bloom, working to get started with planting the beds and hanging baskets coming up the next few weeks. You guys are always looking for volunteers that want to get involved.
Right.
Yes.
And if anyone wants to volunteer, just contact the Public Works Office. Number is 878-1239, and we'll connect you with more information and how to get involved in this great group. So I want to thank both of you for coming on today. I certainly learned a lot.
Good.
I need to remember, I think I'm going to start planting some tomatoes now. I know the right way to do it.
Yeah,
Memorial
there you
Day,
go.
though.
Oh yes, that was the key
Not
point.
before Memorial Day.
Well, you can
because
plant them, start them, but
You can start them, but not in the garden.
Keep them out of the garden until Memorial
covering them
Day.
up. Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Fun.
Finally this month, let's take a look at some things going on around town in our Community Notebook segment. So coming up this Saturday, May 12th, we're going to have the Catamount Community Forest Celebration. It'll be held at the Catamount Community Forest at 592 Governor Chittenden Road. It'll start at 1 p.m. and we'll have a program and light refreshments till about 2:30. Then from 2:30 to 4, we invite folks to go for a forest or a bird walk, a mountain bike ride, a trail run, and there'll be kids' activities as well. We ask you to please bring the appropriate gear for the activity. It's free to attend. You'll see on the screen there's some RSVP information to Sarah at the Trust for Public Land to help give us a head count in planning for the event. It's also the time of the year where we look to reappoint and fill terms on our town volunteer boards and commissions. We've got a few openings. There's openings on the Cemetery Commission, Conservation Commission, the Chittenden Solid Waste District Town Representative, the Historical and Architectural Advisory Committee, and the Town Service Officer. If you're interested in applying for one of these positions, please visit the town website on the screen or give me a call and I can explain more information about what's involved. Starting Sunday night, May 12th, a paving project on Route 2 through the village is going to get started. It's going to go from around Shaw's Supermarket to the Federated Church, and this will be a project that's at night due to the traffic volume on that road. They'll be working from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. This is a State of Vermont project on a state road, so VTrans is in charge of it, and their goal is to be complete by the 4th of July. So we ask if you have any questions to please direct them to their public outreach coordinator, Stephanie Barrett. Her number's on the screen. And also the Route 2A project will be continuing this spring as well. They'll be putting in a turning lane at James Brown Drive and some other improvements on the road there. A big thanks to everyone who helped out on Green Up Day. Here are our overall statistics. We collected over 3 tons of trash, 6 truckloads, and we had 477 volunteers sign up, and 668 bags were distributed. Big thanks to everybody to help clean up our community. Coming up later this month is National Public Works Week, where we recognize the hard work of our DPW staff. And again this year, our Department of Public Works is sponsoring a Fill a Truck food and item drive. We'll have food and goods donation boxes at the Town Hall, Public Works office, and the library. We've got a number of recreation programs coming up. You can visit wilsonrec.org for more information and to sign up. Some offerings are on the screen that are taking place in May and June. Please call the recreation office as well if you have any questions. Along those lines, we also have a number of library programs coming up. And you can visit the library website for more information, stop by the library, or give them a call. A reminder, we have our new Williston service request portal to request non-emergency services in town. Things like a pothole, a tree of concern, planning and zoning issue. You can stay updated from the town regarding the request once you put it in with email, text, phone calls. If you navigate to the town homepage, you can find the link to the portal and information about how to use it. Reminder, the Town of Williston's on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at TownWillistonVT or like us on Facebook. So always looking for show feedback and segment ideas as well. You can give me an email or a phone call. Happy to chat anytime and get some ideas for the show. So that's going to wrap it up for this month. Thanks for joining us. Tune into our next episode, premiering on June 10th. You can send in topic ideas beforehand as well. Big thanks to Aiden, our director, for making it happen behind the scenes, and our guest producer this month, Brianne Walsh. I'm Erik Wells, and I'll see you around town.